All right. Well, good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Darrel Ray. He is an organizational psychologist, and he's been at the cutting edge of kind of institutional planning and growing for the last 28 years. And he's also the author of The God Virus, which is a whole other fascinating thing that he does. But you can buy the book and learn about that later, because today we're going to be talking about how to make the leadership of the secular movement flourish. So I'm thrilled to get started with this, so please join me in welcoming Darrel.
Well, good morning. We're going to be, here's the overall kind of plan for the next 2 hours. I'm going to talk for an hour, plus or minus, kind of some overview, kind of a theoretical overview for leadership issues. And then we're going to get up and walk out there, get an extra cup of coffee or whatever we want, and we're going to break up into small groups. I'm going to teach you some real simple leadership and decision-making skills that I think you'll be able to take back and start using literally tomorrow if you have a meeting with your group. I also like to be pretty informal, but because this is a 4-hour workshop, I could not get Liz to let me have 4 hours, so so we're going to condense a 4-hour workshop down to about 2 hours. So I think I'm going to just kind of hold off. If you got an urgent question, raise your hand. I may say, well, let me answer that later, so don't feel like I'm putting you off for that. But I need to kind of manage the time there. But if it's not urgent, we can take a few questions after the end, and we'll stick around for a while and interact. I'm happy to interact and kind of see where you guys are. Okay, so I call this the leadership playing with the big dogs, and we're going to lower the house lights. So yeah, could we lower maybe just these a little bit? Yeah, and I call this the big secret. We're going to learn there is a big secret, and what that might be for us to think about. That works? Can you see it? Okay. All right. It gets better. Just a little bit about me. I started out as a counseling psychologist well, let's go back. I started out as an undergraduate at Friends University, which is a little liberal arts Quaker college in Wichita, Kansas. And then after getting a bachelor's degree there in sociology and anthropology, I went on to get my master's degree at Scarrett College for Christian Workers, because I thought I was going to be a minister. But after 2 years of ministerizing, I decided I can't tell other people what to do what to believe if I don't believe it myself. So I got out of that and then got into a doctoral program at George Peabody College at Vanderbilt University. And I liked counseling psychology, and I liked clinical psychology, but I got bored after about Tuesday. And so after a few years of that, I got into organizational psych and really enjoyed organizational psych. But a lot of organizational psych is how do you treat people? How does a leader treat people? How do you get people to do what you want? And what are the dynamics of groups? What are the dynamics that cause people to go one direction versus another direction? And I've worked with companies like Exxon and Shell and General Electric throughout my whole career. And sometimes they listened to me and sometimes they didn't, as we were talking about earlier, you and I. But it's a vastly interesting learning experience to see how big organizations sometimes can really screw things up pretty effectively. And hopefully we're going to learn a little bit today that will help you know how to kind of guide your organization using some very basic ideas and skills. So what are the qualities of an effective leader? In your book, if you'll look in your book, I've got 2 pages in there somewhere. Don't ask me where. I know they're in there, though. And there are some opportunities for taking some notes. And I'm not going to be religious anymore about, thanks, 32 and 33. About sticking to that line, but I will cover pretty much everything that's in there at some point. So what are the qualities of an effective leader, and what is the big secret, as far as I know, for where you are at? So to start off with, I ran for representative in my freshman class and won. So I was a freshman class representative in the student council. I didn't even come close to doing what Evan has done. I mean, and I was still religious then, so I couldn't have done it. And then I got into my sophomore year, and somebody gave me the stupid idea of running for president of sophomore class, which I did, and unfortunately I won. I mean, it was a really stupid position to be in because it's a lot of work. And I had never worked this hard in my life on a volunteer basis. It was just amazing. And what I found out is I was pretty lazy. I'm a pretty lazy guy. And I didn't realize how lazy I was until I got into that position. And I disappointed a lot of people. I think I probably disappointed, a number of people in sophomore class. And part of the disappointment was I didn't know what I got myself into. And I didn't know how to organize myself. I didn't know what my effect on other people was. And when there was a whole raft of things I had not considered when I ran for that office. It was an ego thing, right? I mean, I'm president of the sophomore class. And it doesn't sound big to you maybe, but it sounded pretty big to me at the time. So it was pretty interesting to learn from that. And I had a good friend. Fortunately, I had a good friend came up to me one day and said, Darrel, I got to talk to you. And he sat me down and he told me some tough stuff. I'm thinking, whoa, I have got a major friend here if he would tell me what he just told me. And it was pretty tough stuff. He said, get your shit together or you need to resign. That's basically what he told me. Big, important part of my life. And I go right back to my sophomore year as a time that just radically changed who I was in many ways because I took serious. That guy is still a friend of mine today. That's how important that was. My junior year, I became, as a result of that, I became a major player on the Model United Nations. So you guys don't have those anymore, do you? Model United Nations, those are awesome. And our particular university, Friends University, was big into that. And we had national conventions, and people would come from all over the United States to compete in our Model United Nations. So it was a big organizational headache, like what you guys have gone through to put this together. 700 or 800 people would show up, and they'd all be ready to compete. It's almost like a debating society, only you have 800 people all debating the Palestinian issue. And that sort of stuff. So in my senior year, I became the president of the Security Council of the Model United Nations. And there's where I finally learned, you got to get your ego out of this thing and make sure you spread the love around. Make sure everybody feels like they were an important, critical part of what you were doing. And when I did that, it was like a watershed event. When I did that, I realized how important praise and recognition of everybody else is, and how absolutely self-destructive it is to heap it on yourself. The less praise, the less recognition you give yourself, or manipulate other people into giving you, by the way, we all know how to do that, don't we? The better you are. Because I think humility is one of the most effective, most important characteristics of an effective leader. Leaders who are too busy touting themselves are driving people away. The more recognition you need, the fewer people are going to follow you. The more you recognize other people and give them the recognition and the praise and the development that they need to get not only where you want the organization to go, but where they need to go in their lives. Joe and I were talking earlier this morning. I asked him, give me your 5-minute summary of your speech because I heard good things about it. And everything Joe told me was interesting. I'm sitting here listening thinking, okay, that's right. Everything Joe told me was, how do you develop other people? How do you find their niche? How do you chunk it down to a size that's manageable for their characteristics, their personality, their skill level? That's the role of a leader. How do you read and use other people to their benefit? Because they're not going to follow you if they don't see some benefit. It's you have that radio station here, WIIFM? You don't have WIIFM here in Southern California? WIIFM. What's in it for me? You have that radio station here? Yeah, right. WIIFM. Every human being on the face of the earth wants to know what's in it for me. And if you just keep that in mind, and let's say I want to get August to work with me on some project with some money, maybe a money-raising project for SSA here on this campus, I'm going to have to figure out what does August want out of this? What would he gain? And sometimes it's as simple as he wants to learn organizational skills, or he wants to learn influence skills, or there's something about it that he could use as a result of this activity. So then I've got to find a way to let go enough to let him learn those skills and let him fail in those skills, but not fail so bad it hurts the organization. But that's kind of what happened to me in my sophomore year when my friend sat me down. I was about ready to fail big time. If he hadn't sat me down and says, Darrel, you need to get your act together or resign. And he had no power to force me out. It's not like he could have fired me because I'm the president, right? But that little lesson helped me reform where I need to go and start thinking about what is the role of a leader. It's not just standing up and making speeches every now and then and taking credit for a lot of things that I probably didn't do that much to impact anyway. In graduate school, I started, again, I'm still kind of religious. I have this job in the middle, every summer, for 2 summers, this job as a camp counselor at a church, assistant camp director at a church camp, and then a camp director the next year. So 2 back-to-back years, I am the director of a church camp. And what I found was those people don't know how to run an organization, and money-wise. They were losing money every single year. So for some reason, I don't know what it was in me, I said, you can't keep running a place like this because it's the kids that are suffering. You don't have any money for the kids. So if we run this place efficiently and grab as much money as we can and then use that the next year to get a good start, that actually brings more money in. And then you do the same thing. What I learned was if you leave more money in the till at the end of the year than you started out with, it creates a snowball effect. That particular organization ran for 5 years off of the money I left. And it wasn't a dime of mine. I'm a poor graduate student, right? But there was something about leaving a few extra $1,000s in the till every summer just gave us a momentum until they finally shut the whole camp down because of other reasons. So we're going to come back and talk a little bit about what the money issue is. So what are the qualities of a good leader? You can read 100 different leadership books and you'll get 100 different lists. This is Darrel's list. And you can change it, I don't care. And I go through, I think Liz has read a part of my other book called The Performance Culture. I intended to bring some copies here and I totally forgot them, didn't pack them. So if you're interested in getting The Performance Culture, see Kathy back there and we'll ship it to you free if you want to get it. So I think that one of the first most important characteristics is tenacity. If you don't have tenacity, then you're probably going to be a lousy leader. You can't let anything slow you down. You can't let a little criticism. You can't let a few flames on an email get in the way or make you emotionally upset about stuff. So the best leaders I've worked with in corporate America are dogged. They have got a very clear goal where they want to go, and nothing stops them. You may not agree with their goal. You may not even like the person. But you can't disagree with the results they get because they don't let anything get in their way. Second thing I see is creativity. Tenacity is one thing, but if you're tenaciously on your way to hell, it's probably not going to help you too much. You got to be creative. You got to think about what are some new ways to do. You can't do the same thing every year. So the best and most interesting leaders I've worked with are really creative. Not in themselves, but they know creative people. So they go out and they find the Susies, and they say, Susie, you've got a great creative idea here. And I empower Susie to do her creative idea. So when I talk about creativity, I'm really not talking about the creativity of the leader. I'm talking about your ability to spot creativity in other people and then guide that creativity. Third is a thick skin. You got. And you guys who are like at the head of SSA, you have very thick skin. I'm preaching to the choir with you guys, I know. But if you're an atheist in a Lutheran organization, Lutheran church, Lutheran university, you've probably got pretty thick skin to begin with. But if you're going to be a leader at anything, the ability to let the arrows bounce off of you and keep moving forward, and even keep a relationship with those people who have shot those arrows. That's the tough part. How do you keep the relationship with the people who criticized you behind your back, who wrote a flame on a friend's Facebook or whatever, you've got to find a way to keep that relationship going. Because if every time somebody does something like that, you cut them off, you're cutting your nose off to spite your face. They're not bad people. They may have engaged in a bad behavior, and you don't approve of that behavior, but cutting them off does not help your organization and doesn't help you, and they don't learn anything from it. Think about what would have happened if my friend had not sat me down and said, Darrel, get your act together or resign. I might have continued down a fairly inappropriate path for quite a while. Or I could have said, Dave, you don't know what you're talking about. I could have gotten defensive. I could have said, you're the problem here. I needed your help and you weren't there to help me. I could have done something like that. And it might have been true. He might have not been there to help me when I needed it. I could have blamed him. But I think excuses are for losers. People who make excuses are generally losers. And I don't mean that in a pejorative way. I mean, how do you win if you're always making excuses for what you didn't do right and you never learn from it? You've got to learn from your own behavior, and you don't learn from excuse making. So that's all a part of being having a thick skin. You have to have a warm heart too. And by a warm heart, I mean you got to know that almost all people are lovable. There's some part of them that's fun, that's loving, that's caring. They have emotions and commitments in their life. So you have to kind of reach out and find out who they are. If all you're interested in is using another person to achieve your goals as an organization, then that's pretty cold-hearted, if you will. It's the relationship that's important. Now, I don't have, and I can possibly have, and you couldn't either, a relationship with everybody. So you have to be somewhat careful of where you develop those relationships. But generally speaking, I think you have to be warm and open to anybody that comes in contact with you. They have to feel that warmth. One of the most amazing mentor, in my second book, I've dedicated my second book to Mark Phelps. He just died about 3 months ago. I've known Mark since my early in my clinical career. He was my boss. What I saw in Mark was a leader who took an organization that was under 6 legal lawsuits, 2 federal lawsuits, 2 civil rights lawsuits, and 2 complaints, and 2 state lawsuits were against this organization when he took over. I was the clinical director of the organization, and I had just come in less than a year before, so it was a pretty lousy place to work to begin with. And here Mark comes in as our superintendent. It's a mental health institution. He turns that sucker around in a single year. In a single year, we are starting to win awards. By the 4th year he was there, we were making national splashes. And I watched how he operated. At one point in time, he fired over a period of 4 years, he fired 28 people. Nobody had been fired in this institution for probably 30 years. And he fired 28 people. I was in the room when he fired 6 of them who thanked him for firing him. Oh, wow. They thanked him for firing them. Why would somebody do that? Why would they say, thank you, Mr. Phelps, for firing me? That just makes no sense, does it? What Mark was able to convey to them was, you are a good person. We like you. We know you're dedicated, but this just is not the job for you. How do we help you find something outside of this institution? And people appreciated that warmth. That's what I call a warm heart. Even as you're firing somebody, people still realize you care about them. You want them to be successful, but this is not the place to be successful. And sometimes that's what you have to do. I heard yesterday you're talking about that guy. I know that guy. He's around. Everybody knows that guy. And it can be that gal too. I think it's more the guy though. It's probably 3 out of 4 is the guy. You have to, sometimes you do have to, quote, fire somebody. You do have to sit down with them and say, this is not the place for you. Or this behavior, we can't have this behavior in our meetings anymore. And if you can say that in a loving, caring, warm way, they may actually change their behavior. I think that's the key. Be very careful when you confront somebody. Confront them as a caring person, one human being to another. Don't waver. They are going to leave the board, if they're on the board, or they're not going to come back to any meetings. You're not going to waver on that. unless you get a clear commitment to their behavioral change. But you're getting it as a warm human being to another human being. You're considering, and you're not being namby-pamby about it. If I was sitting down, I'm saying, August, the last 3 meetings, you've talked a whole lot, and I'm sorry, we have to maintain control. And, I really like you, and I think you have real potential. Here's some skills I think you need to learn. And I'm not going to bullshit you. Here's skills I think you need to learn. I want you to start listening to other people. And I want you to restate what you hear them say in the meetings before you open your mouth. Now, if you can't do that, I'm sorry, but I think I'm going to have to ask you not to come back. Otherwise, I really want to support you in learning how to be a better leader in this organization. So what's in it for August? Better leadership skills. What is he seeing from me? Hopefully, I truly care about him, and I'm not going to bullshit him. I'm telling it like it is, but the behavior is going to change. And that's the way I would treat that guy or that gal. I would be very direct with them. You got to choose your time, and you, above all, do not do that in public. You don't do it in front of the rest of the board. You take the person aside. You buy them a cup of coffee, and you try as much as possible to avoid minimizing words like, August, you're kind of talking, maybe a little bit too much, and that's bullshit. Tell it like it is. August, you dominated the last 3 meetings. I gotta ask you to stop that. I gotta ask some change. All right. Last, and if you read any of my books on business, is the most important one, and that's goal-focused. People who are not goal-focused are not going anywhere. I think every one of you, if I could have a private conversation with you for 5 minutes, first thing I'd ask is, what are 3 measurable goals for this year in your organization? 3 measurable goals. The key is measurable. We want to increase our membership by 50%. That's measurable. We want to put $500 into the pot before the end of the semester. That's measurable. We want to have 4 tabling events within this semester. That's measurable. All of those things are measurable. If you don't have those kinds of measurable goals, then you're a social club. You're a social group. Fine, I don't care. But you're not going to go anywhere. You're not going to increase your membership as fast as you want. And you're going to end up with a lot of people who are frustrated by your leadership because you don't know where you're going. Now, the reason a lot of people don't put goals together is because they're afraid other people will be mad about them, or they might not buy into them. Well, you got to do a little work. You got to get people on board. You got to get them to think about the goals along with you. But when you've decided on the goals, those are the goals. We're not going to debate them for the next semester. You got to have your goals set by the end of September or by the end of January, whenever the semester starts. I'm going to come back and talk about goals, and that'll be part of what we're talking about in the little skill building things. So I think Campus Crusade for Christ are the big dogs. Yeah, they're pretty big. Out of these, for those of you who saw my previous lecture, do not answer this. Which of those is the budget for Campus Crusade for Christ in the United States? Do I hear 10 million? Do I hear 40 million? How about 120 million? You're all wrong. Isn't that amazing? Actually, it's not quite 500 million. It's like $493 million or something like that. They could probably make it 500 million if they really wanted to. That's what we're up against. But I think it's kind of interesting. They're spending $500 million, and what are the results they're getting? Pretty piss-poor results, by the way. They're working their butts off, and they're really not adding a lot. In fact, in some areas we can see, this age group, college age group, the religiosity, according to national surveys and our own research, is going down, 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 down. So they're throwing $500 million down the tubes as we're growing. So it tells us something about what our power could be. Money doesn't buy new converts. Money doesn't teach people how to be atheists. Money doesn't teach people the scientific method. That's a relationship thing. You learn it from other people that you respect. And Campus Crusade for Christ was pretty darn successful for a long time, but I don't think they're going to stay that way because we're going to come in and do some competition head-to-head with them. Where do religious organizations get their members? They get them. How many of you have read The God Virus? Okay, hey, you've got several. If you read The God Virus, remember I talk about When do people get religion? They get religion at 2 points in their life. First, when their rational immune system is underdeveloped, 5 to 7 years old. The second place in time they get religion is when they're under a lot of stress, when they're going through a divorce, when they have an incredibly difficult medical issue, or when they're freshmen in college. Am I correct? That's when Crabbe's Crusade for Christ puts most of their effort. That very first semester of the freshman year, that's when they're going to nail people and get them to commit to Jesus. And then hopefully they've got them for the rest of their college career. So people are out there recruiting your friends, your classmates, because freshman year of college is a pretty darn stressful time period. Now, I'm not saying, trying to finish your senior thesis isn't stressful. It's just that think of all the adjustments people are going through in that freshman year. And look at how many people drop out of college. And then the highest dropout rate happens in that first to second semester of the freshman year. They may go back to college somewhere else, but they drop out then because they couldn't deal with the stress. Nursing homes, hospitals, you name it, wherever people are under stress or physically ill, that's where religionists are out recruiting. And if we're aware of that, then we can say, maybe we should be recruiting a little bit better. Maybe we should strategize around what causes stress in freshmen. How do we strategically use their stress to bring them into our organization? Because I think we've got some great stress relievers. It's called reality. I think the reality is a great stress reliever. You can go to the prayer meeting every Wednesday night, and the prayer meeting is not what's helping you get better grades. The prayer meeting is giving you a social outlet so you can talk about your stresses, but atheists can do that too. There's nothing in the prayer itself that has any impact on grades. So how do we use their stress, if you will? I kind of already mentioned that earlier. So what are religious groups going? Well, they're meeting the social and psychological needs of their members, of their potential members. They're reaching out. They're identifying the vulnerable people. Did any religious group try to recruit you, Evan, when you got here? Yeah, they were smart enough to know this guy ain't going nowhere. Why waste my time? But do you know people that they did capture? That in their freshman year they got them? You do? Okay. And are they still kind of religious and going in that direction? Yeah. So if you can get them in the freshman year, religious people are actually trained in leadership workshops, just like this, trained to spot the weak ones. It's kind of like wolves circling around a herd of elk. They're seeing for the weak one or the one that's sick, and then they go in and kill it. Well, Christians do the same thing. They kill their curiosity. They kill their spirit of learning and exploration to get them into the religious, infect them with the God virus. So a lot of kids come to college with a lot of guilt, a lot of uncertainty, with a lot of fear. All those things add to the stress level, and it makes a great opportunity for religious organizations to say, we can help you. Just come to our prayer meeting, or come to our potluck next week, or come to our church and we'll give you free pizza. By the way, pizza has converted more people to Christianity. I'm serious. Pizza converts people to Christianity big time. So that's an interesting idea. So here's what we can do. We can offer people hope. And I'm not sure we're so good at that. Now, it's been a few years since I was in college. So don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say I'm an expert. You are more an expert than I am about your college and where you're trying to go with your group. But if I look back on my experience as a freshman, the thing that's going to hook me, is hope. That, wow, these people have something to offer me. WIIFM. What's in it for me? If I've got something to offer somebody, and they feel like this group can help me with my social needs, can help me with my study needs, with my stress, they're going to come to you. Then they're going to come because there's something in it for them. And as a leader, you've got to think about, what are we offering people. And it could be religionists. You might even have some Christians show up because you offer better social support than whatever the group they've got or don't have. And I think we can do it with reality-based methods rather than fantasy and prayer. I mentioned earlier, put money in the pot. Well, let's shift gears here real quick. I'm kind of giving you an overview, the psychological component of leadership. Now we're going to go to the money component. Shifting gears. Have you noticed atheists, secularists are afraid of money? Have you seen that? I'm just amazed at how scared I see adults of money. It's like we wouldn't dare pass the offering plate. That would make us look like a religion. Well, you know, the religionists aren't scared at all to pass that offering plate. And organizations that don't have any kind of requirement to belong aren't seen as very effective organizations. I mean, what do the Marines say? What's the motto of the Marines? A few good men, right. Not everybody can be a Marine. Well, if you have a little, not a lot, but a little sense of exclusivity, that we are serious about what we do here. We love to play, we play hard, we party hard, but we're also pretty serious. And when we have a book study, we, for example, expect you to have read that book or read that article or something like that. If you have just a hint of exclusivity, it actually attracts people to you. It will put some people off. Some people don't want to read the book. Some people don't want to come have the discussion. Fine, let them stay away. But if anybody can belong to your group, then what kind of a group is that? What's that old saying that Charlie Chaplin had? No, was it Charlie Chaplin? No, Groucho Marx. Groucho Marx. I wouldn't want to belong to any group that would have me as a member. Well, that's probably not the way we want to look at it there. So let's. I see atheist groups all over the nation. I travel all over and I'm talking to groups, and I say, I'm coming to your place. You're sponsoring me. You are putting some time and expense. Use me as a money-making opportunity. Charge $3. I don't care, but get money in the pot. I don't want a dime of it. Use me as a way to make money. And I get there and I walk up and there's nobody's asking for money. I'm thinking, what a waste. Thousands of dollars are being left on the table that could be used to further your organization, could be used to bring more members in, to bring pizza in for all. I mean, let's use pizza. That's the best conversion technique there is. Am I correct? How many of you would come to a meeting that had free pizza? Okay, what if it was a Christian meeting? Would you still show up? Some of you'd still show up. See, I rest my case. So one of my big complaints, of course, I've been working in business. I'm an entrepreneur myself. I've been in my own business for for 3 decades almost. And I can't imagine why we're leaving so much money on the table. And the excuses are rampant. Students are so poor, they can't do that. Students don't have any way to give money, or we don't want to ask the support of the local atheist group for some event because we don't want them controlling us. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons to not ask for money. And then the next complaint is, we can't do that because we don't have any money. No, that's just not the way to run an organization. So one of my pet peeves, one of the things I'd really like you to leave here saying to yourself is, how do we put more money in the pot than we found when we got in this organization? Never leave your organization poorer than you found it. If you just follow that rule, you'll have a lot of friends for the rest of your life, because they'll say, wow, thanks for leaving us $1,000 in there. It got us up to a great start in September when the next leaders come on. It will also help a little bit in recruiting new leaders, because they'll say, wow, okay, there's some money in the pot. We're not going to have to suddenly raise all that money in late August or early September to start our efforts. Do not let people off the hook. I don't care how poor you are. Sooner or later, you can throw $1 in the pot. Now, I wouldn't turn anybody away. I'm not saying throw people out because they don't have $3 for the meeting. But you can always say, we request a $3 donation for any meeting you attend. If you don't have it, fine. But the money pot's going to be there, and somebody's going to be manning it to kind of put the little guilt piece on them. They walk by, they're going to see it Do I put it in or not? And you'll be surprised. Now, when somebody puts money in the pot, they are more committed to that organization. Even if they can't afford $3, if they put $1 in that pot, they will be more committed to your organization than if they not put anything in. So the real principle isn't the money, it's the commitment. And that's the psychological principle I think we are totally missing out on. Churches put a lot of guilt on people to give money to Jesus. Well, I'm going to use that same technique because people are really committed to the place they put their financial resources. And it doesn't have to be a lot of financial resources, but it has to be some financial resources. So put that in your notes, and let's find ways to be more creative about funding our organizations. Would I get any argument from you on this one, Liz?
No, not at all.
Okay, well, I was afraid I was on thin ice here. Now, I think dues are a good idea too. And again, it doesn't have to be big. $5 a semester. I don't care how small it is. I think if you're going to belong to our organization, you have to show some minimal level of commitment to join us. And we're going to put it so darn low that you have absolutely no excuse. You could just not go to Starbucks this week and you'd have it. It's that simple.
Huh? Yeah, just not go to Starbucks today.
Today, right. Today. So get rid of this idea that people are too poor. People are too poor when they are not interested. People know exactly how much money they will give when they are interested. And we're going to keep it low enough. $5 a semester. And oh, by the way, we are not letting you come to the meeting if you don't have the $5. It's that simple. Or we'll overlook at this meeting, but next meeting you're going to pay. It's a simple concept. We're here to support the organization. Money is one aspect of supporting that organization. If somebody literally doesn't have it and wants to join and they're willing to do some extra work or something, maybe you could find a way to let them work it off. I don't care. But let's not let people join our organization for free more than a couple meetings. You know, we give you 3 meetings, then you pay the dues. We give you 1 month, then you pay the dues. I don't care. Whatever works for you. Next is you need to be incredibly open about the finances, because one of the main things I hear is we're afraid of money because we're afraid somebody will steal it, or we don't want to have to manage the money because that means we could have ethical problems. Well, this is the real world. Everybody has to learn how to manage money. I've got a budget. You got a budget. Before you're out of college, you better have managed your budget fairly well, or you won't make it through college. And the last thing is money creates continuity between the years and the administrations. As long as you've got something left in the pot, if you think about it, if I, in my organization, leave an extra $500 that we didn't have when we got in there, that kind of obligates the next. And if we leave and say, okay, Katie, it's your baby this year. We had a good time. You're now the president. We left you $500. And one of our expectations is you add to that $500 before you leave. Well, I'll kind of leave her with that little hint. She's probably going to do it. And then she's going to turn around and say, look, I worked my butt off to get an extra $500. I want to make sure you do it, August, when you take over. So it creates continuity, it creates a sense of obligation, and it creates commitment. Because if there's money in that pot, people want to use the money. And they're going to use it for pizza maybe, but they're also going to use it maybe for charitable work or for something that will grow the organization. Now, I'm going to move on to talk about, and I am going awfully fast here, I'm sorry, but I want to cover a bunch of territory here. I want you to learn how to play to the weaknesses and fears and uncertainty. Isn't that what the Christians do? Isn't that what the religionists do? They play to the weak spot of those who they want to bring into their organization. We have something to offer them because they're struggling. They're struggling to create a new world for themselves away from home. It's especially true at the freshman year level. It can be true of sophomore years. It's very true of transfers in. If you transferred into a new college, you're as susceptible to being preyed on as a freshman is. So they have difficulty. Here's just some questions. Are you having difficulty with organic chemistry or physics? Are you guilt-ridden about something? Is Western Civil boring you? Have you had sinful sex urges while you've been here at this Lutheran college? Are you afraid God's listening to your thoughts? Or maybe you watched, or did God watch you last night when you were, whatever? Come join us for Campus Crusade for Reason and learn how to deal with fears, test anxiety, and whether or not to get laid tonight. And that's exactly the kind of language I'm encouraging. I mean out front kind of language that says we don't believe in any of this religious bullshit, and we're so upfront about it, we're willing to talk like this, out front and in public. Now, yeah, you're going to get some reaction for some groups, but I'll guarantee you, you're also going to get some new people showing up saying, wow, yeah, I'm having these kind of, and they're going to want to talk about it. So you better be ready to talk about some of these issues when they walk in. Or you better be ready to split them up into small groups or do some activity that would allow them to, what's in it for me, to get something from that meeting and see, wow, this group really does have something to offer, and they didn't ask me to pray the whole time. They pointed me towards a website that can really help me with my test anxiety, or they pointed to somebody I can go sit down with and have fun with around my chemistry labs that's coming up. So what's the big secret? I'm going to give you a hint. It's 3 letters. From 15 years old to about 25 and maybe older, human beings are incredibly concerned with their sexuality. Hormones are flowing. New ideas are coming in their head. They're having to learn how to interact with other human beings. If you ignore the most important thing going on in a human being's life at that point in time, you're missing a huge opportunity. And the religionists are not ignoring that. Now, they're not doing it the way we would, but what they're not ignoring it. They are saying, yes, you're right, masturbation is a sin. You need to get that under control. Or, premarital sex is a sin. Come to our prayer meeting and let's pray about it. They are taking advantage of the sexual energy that people have in that time frame in their life, before they get married, before they get in a long-term relationship, and especially before they have children. Because they want to capture you before you have kids so that you will infect your kids with their particular God virus. So what we want to do is say, okay, let's use sex. And sex is an important time during college. A lot of people do a lot of things sexually, and nothing right or wrong about it. It's just that's what's going on in human behavior at the time. So how do we take advantage of the big secret in a way that's appropriate, but also gets us where we want to go? So sexual insecurity is the biggest driving force in this age group, and you can't, or people can't or won't deal with it that are religious. They won't deal with it in a positive way. They'll deal with it in a negative way. But we can deal with it in a positive way. Think about sex-positive messages. We were sitting at the supper last night. We were having a blast, right? We sat and talked about hysterectomies, vasectomies, all sorts of stuff at breakfast this morning. And I don't think anybody flushed once. We weren't embarrassed. Now, the people around us were probably horrified. What I have noticed about atheist groups is we are very comfortable with our sexuality. And we're comfortable with gay sexuality. We're comfortable with lesbian sexuality. We're comfortable with straight sexuality. We're comfortable with bisexuality and transsexuality. We're comfortable with it all. We may not be bi. We may not be straight. We may not be whatever. But we don't care about what you are, and we're supportive of you. Now tell me, which prayer group can you go to for that kind of a thing? Some of our biggest allies are the gays on campus, any campus. They are our allies. They may still go to church. They may still be religious. But, I tend to think all gays are gaytheists. I really do. I think they're, at the bottom line, they're gaytheists. They can read their Bible. They listen to those preachers. They know they are vilified in their unreligion. They are great candidates. And even if they never become an atheist, they are still allies because some of the same kinds of persecution they feel, we feel. And we can work together on that. So, play to the weaknesses. College students, especially the most religious, are more uncertain about their sexuality. They're less educated about sex and guilt, and they're guilty about their own drives and desires. Now, Jen and I, last night, had way too much fun over supper. Look, no, not that kind of fun. It was at supper time. We're looking at the latest data. How many of you did the sex survey? Ooh, good, all right. Sorry, the rest of you guys missed out on a lot of fun. But we did the sex survey, and we had almost 14,500 people fill the sucker out. Way more than we ever thought would. I mean, it just blew our minds how many people fill the sucker out. But one of the things we saw, and I'm starting to do some analysis, and we've split the group into two groups. Those who said their childhood home was low religiosity, 1, 2, or 3, and their childhood home was a 8, 9, or 10. So we can take these two groups that are at the opposite ends, childhood, this of course long before they became atheists, and we can compare these two groups. One of the things we're finding is the level of sexual guilt of the high religious is it's like 65 to 70% higher than for the non-religious. Huge difference in guilt. But when you look at the behavior, not a bit of difference. They started masturbating the same time. They started petting the same time. They started screwing other people the same time. Everything is the same. So it doesn't matter whether you're a Baptist or an atheist. Your biology is going to happen, right? It's just what our bodies are programmed to do. So what we've seen is those religions that are most focused on guilt are contributing the most people, currently contributing the most people to the atheist movement. You name the most guilty religion you can think of, and they're out of proportion represented in the new atheists, people who've been atheists 5 years or less. That is an amazing insight. That is something I did not know before we did this survey. And it's not a few hundred, this is thousands of people are telling us this. So it's really something cool, but it tells us something as leaders. Where should we be going? Well, don't go to the Episcopalians. Don't go to the Unitarians. You know, they're pretty guilt-free. But the Pentecostals, the Lutherans are pretty guilt-focused. Depends on which Lutheran. But you get a Missouri Synod Lutheran, and they're guilty as hell. Because they're all going to hell, they think. So there's Mormons. You got a lot of those around here, I've heard. Mormons are the number one guilt-based religion that we've found in our research. Number one. Isn't that amazing? So Pentecostals, non-denominational. You got a few of those around here. You know, the Rick Warren's churches, that church, the non-denominationalists, feeding tons of people into secularism. Far out of proportion, 3 times out of proportion to their population in the United States. So, you've got these kids right here at California Lutheran who are going to a megachurch. Well, let me tell you, if you're going to a megachurch, you are one step away from atheism. It looks like that in our research. Now, I want to just say, I'm not finished with the analysis. I haven't finished the report. We're not really advertising what I'm saying here to you. I'd appreciate if you don't write about it yet. But I thought you might be interested in some of this. Yeah, it's really interesting. But I just can't not tell you this, because you're in the middle of a semester. You're driving to get new members. You're trying to create opportunities for your organization. And there's just so much opportunity, I think, if you focus on the high guilt-focused organizations or religious groups. So religion and sex, I think, I'm not going to talk about that so much today, but religion is the sex is the Achilles heel of almost any religion. The only exception in our research to that is Unitarians. But most Unitarians are atheists anyway. They just don't know it yet. Religious students they're curious as hell about sex, but nobody's telling them about it. In fact, in our research, we found that non-religious students' parents, 38% talk to their kids. Religious students' parents, 13% talk to their kids. And there's no other outlet. So what we found is, where do religious kids get their sex education? from their friends, and from pornography. They use pornography more than the non-religious kids do. I mean, we were sitting there having a big laugh about that last night, but it's obvious as the nose on your face how different the two groups are in where they're getting their sex information. And you know, every one of them are using pornography, just like all of us are using it. 70% of women use pornography according to our research, and 91% of men are. So we're all using it to some degree. They just can't talk about it. And we can. And we can talk out loud about it. Yeah. So how do we counter this? By asking some interesting questions. So, yeah, there's the stats I just spit up earlier on the religious kids. 33% using pornography. The parents, only 13.5% talking to their kids. Interesting stuff. Now, there is the non-religious kids. 38% of their parents have talked to them, and they're only using pornography 25%. Hey, I'm nothing against pornography. Don't get me wrong here. It's just that the religious people say they don't use it, and they use more of it. And, of course, you know, the highest usage rate of pornography in the United States is where? Utah, right. And the second highest is anywhere there's in the Bible Belt. If there's high religiosity, there's high pornography use. How many of you have read or heard of Saul Alinsky? Oh, good. Have you read Saul Alinsky? No. Okay. Okay, guys. How many of you have read the Bible? Okay, good. Throw the Bible away and pick up Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky. If it's 100 pages, I'd be surprised. It is one of the most powerful little books you'll ever read in your life. And it'll give you all sorts of ideas about how you find the weak spot in a system and use the weakness against the system itself. Barack Obama, our president, was schooled by the Saul Alinsky people. I don't know if he ever knew Saul Alinsky. I doubt it, because I think he died before Obama was really active in community organizations. But Saul Alinsky is the granddaddy of community organizing. And he went head-to-head with the likes of Mayor Richard Daley and beat him. Went head-to-head with the likes of Kodak Company and beat him. Because this guy knew how to find the weakness in a system and then use that weakness against them. Every one of us, activists, community organizers, secular student alliance leaders, doesn't matter. This is one person you need to be able to say, yes, I read Saul Alinsky. Read him before you read the God virus even. But then get to the God virus, of course, after that. Yeah, Hugh?
Isn't Saul Alinsky a special Satan to the evangelicals?
Oh, Saul. Yeah, so that's a recommendation right there, right? Yeah, the evangelicals even have some of their own organizers who've stolen Saul Alinsky's ideas to use, what's his name, the George Bush guy that... Karl Rove is a Saul Alinsky disciple, if you will, on the wrong side. Karl Rove used Saul Alinsky and really idolized Saul Alinsky, but he's using Saul Alinsky's own skills for George Bush, or did. So find the weaknesses and play to the weaknesses of the system that you're in, and find allies on the campus. I've already mentioned the whole LGBT community. I think they're allies. So challenge some myths. I'm gonna give you some ideas here that I think will be interesting. Let's use some simple ideas to challenge some sexual myths on campus. Did your minister use condoms with his 2 girlfriends in college? Now, how many of you know ministers that say abstinence only? Well, I want to ask the other question. I'm saying, did you do abstinence only when you were in college? 95% of all Americans have premarital sex. That means your minister probably had premarital sex. Did he use a condom? I just want to ask that question. Did your minister's wife have sex before she was married? No. Do you really believe that? Have you talked to your parents about sex? Most religious kids can't or won't. Imagine, here is your advertisement for your next meeting, and your next discussion is going to be how to talk to parents about sex. Now that's kind of a flip side, isn't it? Because Parents are always having meetings about how to talk to kids about sex. Let's flip it over and let's say, have you talked to your parents about sex? You know, most religious kids can't talk to their parents about sex. We're gonna talk about that. It kind of turns the world on its head, turns it upside down. People come to stuff about sex because 15 to 25-year-olds are really interested in sex. 39-year-olds like me are too, by the way. But I'm not go there. Does your religion make you feel guilty about sex? Most do. Simple messages. And you don't have to put anything else up. But it just gets people to start thinking. Because, you know, religions will not answer these questions. They won't even touch. This is anathema to almost any religion. Does your minister's wife masturbate? What do you think? All in favor of, do you think she does? Okay. Who uses porn in your church? Do you think your minister uses porn? Isn't it interesting? I mean, you can just put simple facts up on your website, or you can put simple facts up in your next advertisement that for your next meeting that kind of get people to thinking. Questions? I never thought about my minister's wife masturbating. That's an interesting question. Who's ever asked that question? It's never been done because that is forbidden. That is taboo in the religious world. You don't even use that word, masturbation. It makes people embarrassed. And you certainly don't ask it about religious people doing it, even though they all do it. I studied with the great psychotherapist Albert Ellis back in the late 70s and early 80s. Albert Ellis had a famous saying. He said, 97% of men will admit to masturbating, and the other 3% are lying. Women's probably not too far off. He didn't mention women in the lecture I heard. So, just some ways to think about it. Now, I've used sex, but there's other things you could use to kind of switch the subject matter on its head and get people to think from a different angle. Because that's what we do pretty damn good, I think. Atheists, secularists, we look at the world from different angles. The religionists, they don't have the capacity to do that. Or they're not allowed to do that. So we're going to give them opportunities. Religion promises relief from the guilt that's taught, but it taught the guilt in the first place. Then it says, come to us. Religion promises some hocus pocus that's going to stem the urges and the drives. Come to the prayer meeting and you won't want to screw your girlfriend anymore. Come to the prayer meeting and you won't want to masturbate tonight. They really try to teach you or tell you that works. How many of you have had that taught to you at some point? Yeah, several of you. Big time when I was a kid. Promises, it actually promises more guilt when you do what you're not supposed to be doing. So it does promise something that's not good, and people just seem to buy right into it. Yeah, I know masturbating's not right, and I know screwing my boyfriend's not right, but I came to the prayer meeting, I feel better. But now, a week later, I'm feeling the real urge. How do I stay out of bed? I got to pray to Jesus some more. It just kind of reinforces, as I talk about in the God virus, it really reinforces what I call the guilt cycle. And the guilt cycle is rampant in college freshmen. They're so stressed out. They're trying to find a way to deal with these incredible urges and drives and social needs. So they're doing things they've never done before, and they're feeling guilty as hell about it, and now they've got to go find relief somewhere. And I don't mean sexual relief, I mean guilt relief. Religion promises a friendly group to not talk about sex and pretend like no one's having it. Does that make sense? All right. So, I've kind of already talked about some of this. I'm going to move on because I'm running out of time for this first part. So I'm going to talk about activism. I hear a lot of organizations, groups, not just student groups, say, are we an activist group or are we a social group? And that's a big argument in the secular community throughout the United States. And we even have entire major organizations. I mean, you got this argument going on between you fill in the blanks. Major national organization A saying activism's the way to go, and major group organization B that says, oh no, we need to soft pedal it and be kinder and gentler atheists. And I don't care. It doesn't matter which group you belong to, but you've got to meet the needs of both if you're going to have a viable group. If you're a highly activist person, you probably are not the same as the 95% of the people on the face of the earth that are not activists. So you've got to find a way to meld those two. And I write outside, I've got an article on leadership in the secular community that you can get from Kathy. And I talk about how do you meld those two? How do you take, the social side and the activist side and bring those together? I hear too much fighting going on about are we social or are we activist? And you're not either. You're both. And if you don't do both well, you're probably not going to do well, period. Learn how to do consensus. I see way too much conflict in organizations that I deal with. Let me give you a new definition for consensus, and it's right up there. If you're on a board, or if you're trying to make a decision, you're trying to go a specific direction, what I want you to memorize this. 80% of the group can buy into 80% of the decision. It's a fairly simple definition. Too many people think consensus is 100% agreement. Well, that's idiotic. Nobody gets 100% agreement. And the second thing is you want commitment. And nobody's going to commit 100% to anything. So to try and set the standard at 100% agreement and 100% commitment is unrealistic. If you set it at 80% commitment and 80% agreement, then you still got 20% against you, if you think of it in those terms. So you take 80% and you got the other 20% is against you. So you have to take that 20% and subtract it from 80%. That means you've got 60% moving in the same direction. See how that works? So we want to at least have 60% moving in the same direction. And we don't want to set the bar so high that we don't get anything or so low that we don't get anything either. It's got to be kind of a happy medium. So how do you get consensus? How many of you have trouble getting decisions made in your group? Okay. What we're going to do in the next hour is learn how to do a consensus-making decision process that will take away a lot of the conflict and a lot of the problems that you've experienced in the past. If you follow the system I'm going to teach you. If you don't, I can't help you. Sorry. Okay. So to summarize what we've done in this first section, I want you to learn effective leadership skills and realize that what's in it for you is you're going to get better at being a leader. You're going to learn a lot of skills, and I want you to be sure and make sure other people are learning skills and being developed too, as you heard in Joe's talk. Get your ego out of the process. You are not important. The more important you think you are, the less effective you probably are. You will get plenty of recognition. If you have faith in the process, if you give other people recognition, it will come back to you. I'm not a believer in this karma bullshit, but it works. I mean, to the degree that you support other people, they will support you. It's the ego that gets in the way, that no, I deserve all the recognition, or I deserve 30% of the recognition. You know, if you have this, in fact, I think you should get rid of the word deserve from your vocabulary. Anybody who thinks they deserve something is out to lunch already. You deserve nothing. You deserve to get out there and work your butt off and try to achieve a goal. If you achieve that goal, then maybe the world will recognize you. Maybe it won't. But you're getting something out of it, and a lot of times you're getting new leadership skills. You're gaining new friends. You're gaining influence in the world. And that's where I want to be in my life. I want to influence this world. I don't care if they recognize me for it, but I do want to influence this world. And I know I can't control the world, but I can sure as hell help people go a direction that's more akin to where I want to go in this world. Money makes the world go round. Embrace it. Use it. Don't be afraid of money. You have to be reasonable and rational about it, but not collecting any money is, well, just to say it frankly, stupid. Get out there and find ways to fund your organization. The religionists certainly are. And goals, goals, and goals. If you don't have 3 clearly written, and I mean written down, at the beginning of every semester, you and your board need to sit and say, what are we going to achieve this semester? And you can have social goals. We want to have at least 3 pizza parties. That's fine. You can measure that. But you got to have the money to do it, so we need to raise $500 for the pizza party. That's measurable. So no matter what, it has to be measurable, has to be written down. Learn the opposition. Play to their weaknesses. Know that people are going to non-denominational or fundamentalist churches are very insecure. There's a lot of guilt there. So how do we subtly play to that guilt? How do we get them to ask questions their minister would never dream of asking from the pulpit? And meet the social needs of the group, and I think your group will grow. Because that's what people come to groups for, to get their social needs met. Remember, WIIFM. What's in it for them? WIIFM. What's in it for them? Keep that in mind. All right, guys, so why don't we take like a 4 or 5 minute break? And what we're going to do is we're going to meet out there in the lobby, and we're going to reconvene to do some more activity.